Time to talk about how we can make some money. UFC Perth, Della Maddalena versus Prates goes down this Saturday, May 2nd. I'm going to break down every fight on the card. Let's dive in. We got lightweights kicking things off. Steele making his return to Australia to take on Dom Marfan, the road to UFC guy. Steele started competing in MMA when he was around 26 years old. Prior to that, though, he has been doing a ton of grappling competitions, and you can see in his pre-UFC tape, this guy's doing a ton of wrestling. And if he gets to any dominant or advantageous position on your hips, he can send you for a ride. But more recently, in his last couple fights, he's been throwing the hands. He's got some pretty solid leg kicks. He's got some really nasty combinations, especially to the body. He is somewhat hittable just because of the way he pressures forward, but he definitely has a power advantage on his opponents and the elite grappling. Like I said, we haven't seen that really in his last couple fights, but it's in his back pocket. I don't think he's going to be super easy to hold down at any point. And yeah, if you try to wrestle him, as we found out the last time someone tried to take him down, he can send you for a loop. This guy tried to grab a hold of him. He just dug a underhook immediately, got to the reverse body lock and slammed him. So Steele is not a guy you're probably going to have a lot of success with in the grappling realm, even though Fan's a decent grappler. The thing with Steele is, he made his debut about a year ago in Australia, and he didn't perform super well. He was a huge favorite, I believe around minus 300, against Rongju, a wide line no matter how you square that one, but he definitely underperformed a little bit. He was a little bit hesitant, seemed nervous, kind of built into the fight, but didn't have a great performance in his debut, and he has not fought since then. It's been a little over a year. Now, Dom Marfan on the other side, he just likes to grind away in the clinch. He's going to work some nasty strikes, and he goes for a lot of takedowns, but he's not really level changing. He's just initiating the body lock and then looking for trips. He's got a really nasty inside trip. So usually Dom Marfan is looking to grapple, but he can strike a little bit. He's definitely tough. He's not going to be super easy to put away. I think he's got a good chin. He's got a decent jab. Got some kicks he can mix in as well, but he's kind of vulnerable in a couple areas. Even though he's got a good chin, I think he's vulnerable to calf kicks. And then I don't like the way he reacts to body shots. A lot of times when he's getting hit to the body, it seems like he doesn't like it. He's kind of open to those with how his guard is. And then it seems like if someone's ever putting a lot of pressure on him, he just tries to go to that clinch. So even though Steele had a bad performance his last time around in the UFC, I think he's got a real opportunity here to put on a show. He's getting in work with high-level UFC fighters. I think his striking can really give Dom Marfan problems here. I think when he starts ripping to the body, Fan's not going to like it. And I think ultimately Steele's going to be live for a KO here. I also think Steele can probably negate any of the grappling Fan attempts here. Again, we can't get too crazy because we haven't seen Steele perform really well at the UFC level yet, but I believe he can do it, and I believe this is a good spot for him to do exactly that, especially since I don't think a lot of these road to UFC guys are that good. So give me Steele here. I got a bet in on him at minus 145. I think you can play him to about minus 200, but once it gets past that, you might have to stay away. Give me Steele by second round KO. Next, we got welterweights. Jonathan Micallef taking on Themba Gorimbo. So, to be honest, I'm not 100% sure what to make of Jonathan Micallef. He's had different approaches in his two UFC fights, and his striking's a little bit weird. Kind of slow, doesn't look great, but he seems like he's kind of durable, and he can hurt you with some of his strikes. He's hurt both of his UFC opponents so far. He hurt Kevin Jousset, then he also whacked Elliott in round one. I think that durability advantage that Micallef seems to have in his fights is going to be big here because Themba Gorimbo, he's now in his mid-30s, he's a little bit older. He can be chinned, and I think Micallef might be able to leverage just the durability advantage here. His striking style tends to change depending on his fight, like I mentioned. He fought against Kevin Jousset in his debut and was just circling around, working kicks, but he was a lot more aggressive against Elliott. He was just sort of throwing caution to the wind, kind of taking advantage of the durability edge he had. He's also a very good grappler. He's a great submission grappler. I don't think a lot of people expect him to just take down and submit Elliott, but he did exactly that, rendered him unconscious with a rear naked choke. And you can see even in this guy's pre-UFC fights, he likes to go to his submissions. He's dangerous even off of his back with things like triangle chokes. And that's a huge problem here for Gorimbo because he is vulnerable to submissions. So Gorimbo's a pretty decent striker overall. Again, you got to worry about the chin and durability, but he's got some good kicks. Really hits calf kicks hard, and his boxing's not too bad either. Don't sleep on the power he has, even though he doesn't have a lot of knockouts. His offensive grappling is pretty good, but he just seems to be getting put in submissions left and right. And he's not super hard to finish. We've seen him get finished with submissions after he's hurt on the feet. And we also see him get put in some submission attempts, like in the fight against Jeremiah Wells, where he's just shooting for takedowns. The grappling of Temba is good. He's got good level changes. He's pretty strong with the body lock and upper body takedowns. And he does a good job of starting to work hooks in from the back. But you got to worry about those submissions. And then you also have to worry about the chin, like I mentioned. And he does seem to slow down in fights. So, yeah, Jonathan Micallef is not a guy I want to lay minus 350 on, but he's going to have a durability advantage here. He's going to be the hometown guy. I think he's going to be able to come on strong late if needed. If he just throws caution to the wind, tries to take Temba's head off, he's probably going to be able to hurt him. And then he's going to be able to put Gorimbo in a lot of submission attempts as well. And I don't know if he's going to escape those. Maybe if Gorimbo gets a takedown, Micallef can start working subs off his back. Maybe Micallef can get a takedown, especially if Gorimbo gets tired. Or Micallef could get like a club and sub. So I see a lot of ways Micallef could win this fight. But again, not so sure. I have a great read on him. I'm still not sure what to make of him, but I do think he wins this fight most likely. Give me Micallef by second round submission here. Middleweights next. Wes Schultz taking on Ben Johnston. So Wes Schultz, kind of a disappointment in his UFC debut against our buddy Damian Penis. But when Wes Schultz is winning fights, he's doing it with his elite wrestling and jiu-jitsu. He's not the most physical guy in the world, but he really knows how to unbalance his opponents. He's got good level changes. Sometimes he'll do these really nifty takedowns where he tries to pull his opponent forward, then maybe he'll circle around to the back, find a way to scramble on top. Really slick in those sort of exchanges. And then, of course, his jiu-jitsu is very good. He's got elite submission ability. He can work submissions from his back. He's good when he gets to his opponent's back. He can work ground and pound submissions from the top. He does really well from those dominant positions. His striking's kind of goofy. He just flings strikes a lot of the time, does unnecessary spinning strikes. Not a lot of power on it, but who knows, against Ben Johnston, who has been dropped sometimes by wind, it seems, it might be somewhat effective, but overall, Wes Schultz striking is not what's going to win him fights, and this guy flakes out a lot. So he's got 3 career losses as a professional. We saw him lose to Dylan Budka, and we saw him get finished by Mansour Abdul Malik and Damian Pinos just a little while in his UFC debut, as I mentioned. Now, I know a couple of those guys, Malik and Pinos, have a lot of power, but those fights were not good looks. He really seemed to flake out and quit at the first signs of adversity, so not a good look for Wes Schultz. But when he is able to get his grappling and wrestling going, he does well. He's going up against Ben Johnston here, and this guy's coming out of retirement. You probably haven't heard of this guy because he only has 6 professional fights, but his last professional fight was like 2 years ago. What the heck are they doing here? Why are they bringing this guy into the UFC? But he's favored here against Schultz. Now, his striking's not too bad, like I mentioned. He's definitely got some chin issues. He's affiliated with City Kickboxing. He's got some decent calf kicks. He's got some good straight punches. He's got a good lead hook that he can time well. But nothing that's going to knock your socks off. Of course, he could end up hurting Schultz here because it doesn't seem like it's that hard to do. He's pretty good with his submissions, I guess. You know, a lot of times you'll see him working a rear naked choke, but he doesn't even have his hooks in. Oftentimes, I think it's pretty low level if you're getting submitted with a rear naked choke when the person doesn't even have their hooks in. But you'll see Johnston get some of his wins with exactly that method, and he's not super hard to take down. His takedown defense isn't anything crazy, so ultimately, this is kind of a confusing line to me. I get it. Wes Schultz looked terrible in his UFC debut, and he could very well lose to this guy Johnston, who we've got barely any information on. But he's coming out of retirement. He hasn't fought in 2 years. And yeah, he's quite a bit older than Schultz. He's like in his mid-30s, and he's got less experience. So I don't know why this line is like this. Wes Schultz could absolutely take this guy down and submit him. And that's what I'm going to say for this fight. I'm going to say it's Wes Schultz by first round submission. I've seen some money come in on Schultz already. I think plus 150, still not a bad look, but obviously if it starts to get closer to a pick'em, you might want to stay away from it because at the end of the day, it is Wes Schultz. We can't really trust him that much, and if he faces any adversity, he's probably going to lose, but he might not face adversity here, because who knows anything about this guy Johnston. He's definitely not that good, and given the layoff and the fact that he's getting older, he might end up being really bad. So we'll go Wes Schultz by first round submission. Bantamweight's next. It's Colby Thicknesse taking on Vince Morales. Colby Thicknesse is extremely agile. He moves around the cage very well. He's like Alexander Volkanovski's best buddy. You always see Volk in his corner whenever he fights. And of course, he's going to be the native Australian here. But even though he's got a lot of speed and movement, his physicality, absolutely zero. There is no sting on any of his strikes. And then when you see him wrestling, he just doesn't have a lot of physical strength. So this guy needs to hit the weight room a little bit more. He's, hitting the track, hitting the treadmill. He's got plenty of speed and plenty of stamina, but power, strength, he's got none of that. And oftentimes, he's kind of unbalanced with his striking. I'm just not a huge fan of that overall. As I alluded to, his wrestling's not great. Not only because he doesn't have a lot of strength, but also because sometimes he doesn't have good technique. Like, he's just sort of like bending over to go for takedowns. And in this matchup particularly, he might have trouble with that, because you do not just want to show Vince Morales your neck on a bad takedown. Now, as we saw in his last fight against Josias Musasa, Thicknesse is actually pretty good once he gets to a dominant position. It's hard for him to land those takedowns, but once he gets the fight to the ground, he's got good jiu-jitsu skills, he maintains top position well, he can get to the back, he can lock in a body triangle and work good ground and pound. So Colby Thicknesse has some good skills, mainly the jiu-jitsu, and I would say the movement and agility, but he's got zero power, not a lot of great wrestling, and kind of okay striking, I guess, but it's not great. Vince Morales, he's making another stint in the UFC. He fought in the UFC previously, got removed, got some wins on the regional scene, and then now he's come back. But he's 0-3 in the second stint so far, just kind of disappointing. He pressures forward a lot, but just doesn't do enough. He doesn't land a ton of strikes. He's got some good boxing, and he's got good timing. I think he has ways to cut off the cage, which is going to be important here. It's just a matter of whether he lets his hands go enough when he does cut off the cage, because sometimes he doesn't do that. I would say Morales is deceivingly strong. He got a nice takedown in his first fight of the second UFC stint against Taylor Lapulus, and that's a difficult opponent. But there was one time I think Morales went for like a high crotch and just dumped Taylor Lapulus. So if he gets a hold of you, Morales, he can definitely get the fight to the ground. And he's also really, really strong from his front chokes. He can manipulate his opponents well from there. I think a lot of this fight just depends on what version of Vince Morales shows up, because he just doesn't seem to be able to fight at his best ability in the UFC. He's just kind of crap in the bed here. Now, granted, 2 of his last 3 fights were against Lapulus and Raul Rosas Jr., who are really, really good. So it's not a horrible look that he's losing to those guys. And then the other loss comes to Elijah Smith, who's also a pretty good prospect. So he's not losing the bums, he's just not really doing enough in those fights. But here, I think he has a lot of ways to win. I think if he does a good job cutting off the cage and just lets his hands go a bit, he's going to have more power than Thicknesse. He can beat him on the feet. I think he's going to be able to defend a lot of takedowns and potentially put Colby Thicknesse in some front choke situations. And if Morales chooses to go for takedowns of his own, he doesn't do that a lot in the UFC, but if he does, I think he'll probably get Thicknesse down and then control him a bit, because we have seen Thicknesse not able to get up with as much urgency as you would like to see. Money's coming in on Thicknesse. No, I really don't like betting on Vince Morales just because he's so disappointing so far, but I am not down with the slickness on the Colby Thicknesse side, and I'm not interested in laying minus 185. In fact, if the line keeps climbing, I'm going to have to take a stab at Vince Morales, because there is a real chance he wins this fight, and he's got to be motivated here because he's lost his last 3. Got to win this one if he wants any prayer of staying in the organization. But give me Colby Thicknesse, the hometown young guy, by decision. Oh boy, we got middleweights next. Jacob Malkoun taking on Gerald Meerschaert. Now, I'm not so sure how long we're going to be able to talk about this one. I mean, just check out what the odds are. Now, I think that old Bruce Lee quote, I don't fear the man who knows 1,000 kicks. I fear the man who's practiced the same kick 1,000 times. That applies to Jacob Malkoun, right? Because he's just going to keep it simple, but everything's really tight. everything's really technical. He's going to come forward. He's got a jab-based offense. He'll follow the jab with a rear hand, follow that with a hook. Got a nice 1-2-3, but nothing crazy, just keeping it really simple, really technical. And every time he throws something, it just goes right back to his guard. Everything comes out nice and straight. Then when it comes to wrestling, it was bread and butter is just that single leg takedown. He goes for the single leg and runs the pipe. Can do that over and over and over again, rinse and repeat. He just uses these simple tactics while staying fundamentally sound to have a lot of success. And I don't really have any concerns about the volume, about the takedown attempts, about the fight IQ and the stamina of Jacob Malkoun. Ultimately, he's just a really reliable guy, someone you don't have to worry about messing around too much, and he's got some good core skills to succeed in MMA. Now, Gerald Meerschaert, he is not doing well recently. He's on a big losing skid. That all started with him quitting in the third round against Reinier Dariush. I don't know what was up with that. He just looks cooked. His chin has never been that great, but it's really getting pounded recently. Erceg knocked him out, and then he got dropped almost immediately by Kyle Dawkins and then submitted. So I don't think this guy has any durability left. Another problem with him is that you can't really trust him to win a lot of scrambles because he does not have a fast twitch muscle fiber in his body, which also makes it hard for him to close distance really well on his takedowns. He's just not too explosive. Now, he is known for being able to get submissions late in fights. You know, Meerschaert third round sub is like a legendary play, but there's nothing that sticks out to me for Jacob Malkoun that would lead me to believe he's going to be submitted easily. So I'm not really sure what a Gerald Meerschaert win looks like here. He's way slower than Malkoun. I don't think he's going to survive long on the feet. Even though Malkoun doesn't have a ton of power, I think he's absolutely going to be live for a knockout. I think that's probably how he gets this one done. But he might sub Meerschaert too, because Meerschaert's been subbed. He can take Meerschaert down. He can beat him up on the feet. I don't think Meerschaert has a lot of power to threaten him with. I don't think Meerschaert's going to get takedowns. And like I said, I don't think Meerschaert's going to submit him. So just really narrow opportunities for victory here on the Gerald Meerschaert side. But what are we supposed to do with minus 1,000? I haven't seen the method of victory props yet, but I think a Jacob Malkoun KO is highly likely. I'm going Malkoun KO 1, but really he can win this fight however he chooses. Next, we got light heavyweights. Junior Tafa taking on Kevin Christian. So this is another borderline hilarious fight. So we know all about Junior Tafa and the Tafa brothers. I actually think Junior, of the two, has more potential. He's extremely powerful. We all know that. He puts a ton of force into his punches, tries to take your head off with everything he throws. Then, so far in the UFC, he's proven to have a really good chin. People aren't really able to hurt him that easily. He's got nasty uppercuts, good combinations. Sometimes sets his strikes up well as good jab. Boxing is very good overall. But holy cow! To say this guy has bad grappling would be an understatement. We would actually call him a BJJ transparent belt. Because, being a white belt means you actually have some intuitive understanding of leverage and how to manipulate other people, but Junior Tafa doesn't even have that, so he's a transparent belt. He's lower than a white belt, so if he ever gets taken down, he is absolutely cooked. Now, his takedown defense from a statistical standpoint isn't that bad. He can defend some takedowns, but you are really nervous if Tafa ever gets taken to the mat, and overall, I just sort of question the heart of this guy. I think he's a little unreliable. The Sean Sheriff fight was not a great look because Sheriff was getting really gassed. He was making his debut on short notice, and then Junior Tafa was sort of slowing down in that fight. It looked like he might not be able to finish him, so you have to question the heart, the conditioning of Junior Tafa, and also how seriously is he taking his career. If he's gotten out grappled this many times but still hasn't improved his grappling at all, as we've seen in his last couple of fights, I don't know how much we can trust him, but we might be able to trust him to beat this guy because Kevin Christian is just begging to get knocked out, standing at 6'7", but that chin is way up in the air. I think he's got a glass jaw. Doesn't really enter the pocket intelligently, and you wouldn't think he has to because he's so tall, but a lot of times he'll just completely drop his hand, start ripping to the body, just begging to get knocked out. Defense isn't very good, and frankly, the chin isn't very good because Billy Elicana doesn't have a lot of power, and he just smoked Kevin Christian on the chin and then submitted him soon after. So yeah, this should be an easy fight for Junior Tafa. Maybe we'll see Christian wrestle, but I don't think this guy is great wrestling, and like I said, Tafa has at least mediocre takedown defense. He's seen takedowns before, and he might be able to stuff them from Christian, I think, if Christian does attempt them. Now, Kevin Christian's got some wins via like triangle and stuff. Tafa's obviously not going to be trying to take him down, so I'm not so sure how many opportunities he's going to have for that, unless maybe Tafa drops him and is trying to finish him. But ultimately, I just don't think Kevin Christian is very good. I think Junior Tafa's way better on the feet. Even though he's shorter here and has a lot less reach, I do believe he's going to be able to get inside. I don't think Kevin Christian's going to be able to make Tafa respect his striking. And I don't think Kevin Christian's necessarily going to be able to get takedowns that easy. And since I think Kevin Christian's begging to be knocked out, and the easiest way for Tafa to win is via knockout, I think we're going to see a first-round Junior Tafa knockout here. I think the UFC is trying to get him a win in Australia. So I think Junior Tafa's finally going to get a W in the UFC. He's already gotten a couple, but they've been few and far between. Give me Junior Tafa here by first-round knockout. -170. And honestly, I think that's not too bad. I haven't played it yet, but if this continues to drop, I'm going to have no choice. Because like I say, Kevin Christian is just begging to get knocked out. I think he's going to come all the way from Brazil just to give Junior Tafa a highlight in his backyard. Middleweights, Cam Rowston taking on Robert Bryczek. So I don't know what to make of Cam Rowston, to be honest here. He came through the Contender Series. He actually fought a couple times there. Lost to Therese Finney, which isn't a good look at this point. And then when he fought last summer on the Contender Series, at first he was actually supposed to fight somebody else other than that guy Brandon Holmes, a guy who I think was going to destroy him, but that guy couldn't make the fight. Brandon Holmes, who's honestly not very good, stepped in. Cam Rowston gets the finish over him, gets to go to the UFC. Then he beats Andre Petrosky, who's got no chin. And then he beats Cody Brundage, who's Cody Brundage. So I'm not so sure how much we can take from Cam Rowston's wins so far. What we do know is that he has an association with City Kickboxing. He's real tall, and he's going to use that length to manage distance. He sort of just has his hands extended, doesn't really let you get into the pocket, tries to jab you up, does a good job of striking from range. I think he's actually put on a little bit of muscle recently. If you look at him in the Therese Finney fight, he was like really, really scrawny. He's put on some more muscle since then, I think, but still not super physical. And he's a good grappler overall, so recently he's been winning by knockout. Each of his last 3 wins come by KO, but let's be honest, this guy's not a knockout artist. Look at his wins before that. He wasn't knocking anybody out, really. He's actually more of a grappler, if anything. He'll actually attempt a lot of takedowns, and he's got good submission ability. He's decent from his back. He's pretty sound overall as a grappler, and that might be something he's going to exploit against Robert Bryczek, but probably not, because based on what I've heard from him and what he's been doing, I think he's just going to try to keep the fight at distance. Robert Bryczek, he's a guy who came from Octagon a little while ago, and he was just smoking everybody in the first round. He comes forward with these nasty combinations. He'll work to the body. A lot of his strikes come in like bunches, 3 to 4 piece combinations a lot of the time. And he's got a good jab too. Really just nasty boxing from Bryczek, but he's got some problems. First of all, most of his wins come in the first round, so he's not usually able to sustain the pressure he's putting on. He'll gas out. And one thing you'll notice against Ihor Pochieria, I get it, that was against a southpaw, but I think you can see some more glimpses of this in his last fight against Brad Tavares. He's not always great at cutting off the cage. He'll sort of just follow people around. And that's going to be a huge problem here because Cam Rowston is taller. If Robert Bryczek can't cut off the cage, Rowston's just going to try to manage distance. He's going to move around and pick him apart. Bryczek will never be able to get close enough to work his stuff. And the other problem is, if he doesn't get a finish in round 1, I don't think Bryczek's going to have a lot of success, and then there is a world where maybe Cam Rowston mixes in some grappling and can start to get him down. I know Ihor Pochieria didn't have a lot of luck taking down Bryczek, but that's because Pochiera's wrestling is terrible. So ultimately, I think Cam Rowston is a lot more likely to get this one done. I think the main win condition for Bryczek is early first-round KO, and there's actually a good chance of that happening because I don't think Rowston's super durable, and like I said, I don't think he's as good as a lot of people think he is. I think he's just gotten to this point due to favorable circumstances. But I will take Cam Rowston to win this one. I'm going to say by decision, but a finish is very likely. I think he could win by KO or sub, but just of the 3 methods of victory, I'm going to go with decision as the most likely for Rowston. So give me Rowston, decision. Not interested in playing the money line. We'll see what the props look like. Oh no, we got heavyweights. Tuivasa taking on Louis Sutherland. So they are trying desperately to get Tuivasa a win. He was supposed to fight Sean Sheriff, a guy who's 0-2 in the UFC so far, but that fight fell out, and now Louis Sutherland stepping in, and he's also 0-2. Now, Tuivasa has lost about 9 million fights in a row, and a lot of people don't think he's taking his career seriously. He's got some stuff, some businesses going on outside the cage, and he's clearly not in very good shape. I mean, it would be fair to call this guy obese. That's why I've got it on the slide here. He is definitely overweight and not in great fighting condition. He does have some pretty nasty calf kicks, and he's known as a brawler. He's just gonna wing huge punches in close, and if he catches you with one of those, he can knock you out. And although Tuivasa has been knocked out, I'd say for the most part, he's got a really solid chin for heavyweight. Again, with these big guys slinging their leather, you usually don't want to test your chin, but so far, Tuivasa is able to take punches pretty well, and he's been in the UFC for quite a while. Is pretty impressive. Louis Sutherland has taken this fight on short notice, as I mentioned, and he just barely got knocked out. He fought in March against Pericic, a guy we'll talk about in a couple minutes. And yeah, it was the first time he ever suffered a loss via KO, and it was pretty brutal. So you got to be concerned with Louis Sutherland here, getting right back into the cage. But I'd be lying if I said he didn't have a chance here, because Tuivasa does not like to grapple, and Louis Sutherland wrestles quite a bit. So if he can take Tuivasa down a bunch, he's going to make him work. And Tuivasa does not like working. It's probably hard for him to get up from his back if nobody's on top of him. So with a big guy like Sutherland on top, it might be kind of hard. The problem is Louis Sutherland doesn't have tremendous control. I don't think he's got great jiu-jitsu, and then he's not going to do anything too damaging once he gets on top. So even though I think Louis Sutherland has a path with wrestling here, I don't really trust him to use it that well, because he doesn't have great control and then doesn't really make people pay once he takes them down. But Louis Sutherland might, engage Tuivasa in a brawl, because he likes to do that as well. It's just if these guys get their mitts swinging, I'm going to say Tuivasa has more power. He's knocked out better guys, and then he's also taken punches from better guys. So I'm just going to say if it's a brawl, Tuivasa has the better chin and the better power, which is why I'm going to lean Tuivasa's way. Also, I'm factoring in the fact this is short notice for Sutherland. I'm slightly leaning Tuivasa, but holy smoke, Sutherland could win with his wrestling. He's got good double legs which he can run through, and Tuivasa, while he's got some understanding of how to get up, I think his lack of physical fitness is what, keeps him down a lot of the times. So if this line continues to climb, if money keeps coming in on Tuivasa, I might have to take a stab at Sutherland, but this also just might be a good spot where we bet the overs. Let's be honest, these guys are going to gas out really fast. If someone doesn't find a finish, we might just see the fight go the distance. But give me Tuivasa by first round knockout here. We got more heavyweights. Shamil Gaziev taking on the Australian Brando Pericic. So Shamil Gaziev, he's what I would call fat-letic. Back when I played football, we had an offensive lineman who referred to himself as this, basically saying, I'm just a fat guy, but for a fat guy, I'm very athletic. And that's how you can describe Shamil Gaziev, because this guy thinks he's an athlete. You see the way he's moving his head, coming forward. He's athletic for a fat guy, let's be honest. He is fat-letic. He's going to pressure forward in most of his fights. He's not usually on the back foot. He tries to move his head. Doesn't always do a great job of it because he's got a negative strike differential, but usually he's going to try to draw out strikes from his opponents and then start countering. He's got some power on those counter shots, but they come kind of slow. He can leave himself exposed a lot of times, which I think is how he lost his last fight against Waldo Cortez Acosta. He is going to mix in the wrestling. Now, his wrestling's not good. Even before he made his UFC debut, I was kind of thinking his wrestling isn't great. But, it's not terrible, and he can at least cage press if he has to. He's going to have to be careful against Brando Pericic, though, because this guy hits like a freight train. He is absolutely huge. He trains with City Kickboxing, another CKB guy on this card. And he's going to throw a lot of kicks, especially from the lead leg. I don't know if those are what Shamil has to worry about. I think he's more got to worry about the hands, the heavy power of Pericic, and then some of those knees in the tie clinch, which he has. Because Pericic is really, really strong in the clinch. He's also got good takedown defense. So I mentioned Shamil Gaziev doesn't have great wrestling. It might be good for him to mix that in here just to tire Pericic out, maybe cage press a bit, but I don't think Gaziev is going to be able to take down Pericic that easily. Right now, it seems like Pericic has a good understanding of takedown defense fundamentals. He can get his underhooks. He's really physically strong, so I don't think it's going to be easy for Gaziev to take him down. The problem with Pericic is we don't really know a lot about his late round conditioning. So almost all of his wins, I believe, come in the first round, and he got finished the one time went to the second round. Now, the first couple times I watched that fight, I didn't think it was that bad of a look. I think, he kept his gas decently, but the last time I watched it, it did look like he was slowing down considerably. So, even though I think Pericic is going to be really, really live to smack Gaziev here because Gaziev is hittable, I think Pericic can really hurt him in the first round and finish him. I am really, really nervous about what happens if Gaziev is able to pressure intelligently, draw out those strikes from Pericic, and then maybe Pericic doesn't knock him out in round one. And if that happens, I just don't know how Pericic is going to look. Gaziev is not known for his cardio, but let's be honest. We've seen him go the distance before. We've seen him, put in 4 rounds against Rosenstrike, even though he quit after those 4 rounds. And we know he can go fairly far in fights without completely gassing out and becoming, immobile. But Pericic, we don't know. So I understand why Pericic is a favorite. That might make sense, but I'm going to lean ever so slightly to Gaziev here just because this is a big step up in competition, and I could see Gaziev pressuring forward, surviving, maybe mixing in the wrestling a bit just to throw Pericic off guard, slow him down, and then, if Pericic does slow down, Gaziev might be able to take over the fight and get a finish. So give me Shamil Gaziev by round 1 knockout here. Maybe it's late in round 1, maybe it's in round 2, but I think Gaziev has a good chance of winning this fight, although he could end up getting clocked. But if the price keeps climbing, we're going to be on Gaziev for a bet. Good flyweight matchup here. We got Tim Elliott making his return against the Australian, I believe the Perth native, Steve Erceg. So Tim Elliott doesn't fight too often anymore, and he's getting up there in age. He has this crazy striking style. You can just tell he's been in the octagon a lot because he's awfully comfortable. He's doing all sorts of goofy stuff, lifting up his leg, dancing around. Has his hands really low, just relying on head movement. And given how old he is, I'm not so sure how long he's going to be able to get away with that stuff. But, the last couple times we've seen him, he's looked pretty solid. His durability is held up, and his movement still looks really good. Of course, he doesn't have a lot of power on his strikes. Now, with that experience and veteran savvy comes things like timing. This guy is about as good as you get when it comes to timing takedowns. He shoots in on the exact perfect times. We see it in many of his fights. We saw it last time against Kai Asakura when he was a big underdog, and he might be able to get Steve Erceg down a bit in this fight. But if you look at the record of Tim Elliott, he is vulnerable to subs. He knows what he's doing overall, so not necessarily an easy guy to submit, but if you can lock something up, he absolutely will tap to it, and that's one thing Steve Erceg might be able to take advantage of here. Steve Erceg, I'd say his best attribute could be the distance striking. He's got a really nice jab. He moves his feet slightly, kind of uses his height. He has good positioning, has decent timing and speed, good kicks, like his front kicks. Then he can put together combinations when he needs to. But in addition to the striking, I would say he's got good grappling too. Some people might consider him more of a grappler even. He's not that easy to control in grappling exchanges. He'll do things like give his back, but even if you take his back, he can sort of escape that backpack. So that's one thing that might be a problem here for Elliott. Even if he can time those takedowns well, I don't know if he's going to be able to control Steve Erceg because he's pretty big and he's a good grappler in his own right. Holy smokes, Steve Erceg has been making me really, really nervous lately. The chin is a concern. He got smoked by Kai Kara-France, which isn't a huge deal, but then not too long after that, he gets smoked by Ode Osborne. Ode Osborne almost beat him, and if that had happened, Erceg would be on a 4-fight losing streak right now. I'm getting really nervous for Erceg, and let's be honest. He barely won that fight against Osborne. He's not looking too good. I don't really know if his confidence is where it used to be, and that's a problem here, because Tim Elliott is going to be looking really comfortable in the cage. Again, we haven't seen him in a little while. He last fought in August, and then on top of that, he's getting old. So at some point, Tim Elliott's going to hit a wall, but I can't lay minus 355 on Erceg. Erceg's been looking inconsistent. In fact, less consistent than Elliott, who's older. If Elliott, still looks good, he might be able to land a few takedowns here. He might be able to land some good strikes. And I think the judges, since this is taking place in Perth, will be on Erceg's side. Minus 355 is way too much. So I'm actually interested in a Tim Elliott play here. He was like plus 350 at one point. If we see that line again, holy smokes, I'm going to have to jump on because Tim Elliott could absolutely beat Steve Erceg here. In a lot of ways, he's a much better fighter than Ode Osborne. It's just you got to worry about the age. So I think Steve Erceg probably wins a decision here. I'm going to go with that for a prediction, but yeah, in terms of a bet, Elliott would be the obvious side. So let's see if more money comes in on Erceg. Co-main event time. We got Beneil Dariush taking on Quillan Salkilld. So Beneil Dariush, holy smokes. One thing stands out more than anything else, it's his chin. He's absolutely toast when it comes to that. I mean, he got knocked out immediately by Benoit Saint-Denis. And Saint-Denis has a lot of finishes, but let's be honest, he doesn't have a ton of power. It was just like a short clinch shot that put Dariush right out. He had no recoverability. Then prior to that against Renato Moicano, who has barely any power, he got dropped in round 1. And I know Moicano dropped Duncan too in his last fight, but come on. Moicano does not hit that hard. Beneil Dariush is getting smoked left and right, getting dropped seemingly in every fight, and that's not going to be too good for this matchup. But if somehow his chin survives, he's going to be able to leverage some really, really good wrestling. If he can get you against the fence, he's got a nice double leg, he's got a nice high crotch, he can get good lift from those takedowns, then his jiu-jitsu is phenomenal. He's almost impossible to hold down, he's almost impossible to submit, and he can get to your back really, really well. So if somehow Beneil Dariush can survive a little bit here and engage in grappling with Quillan Salkilld, I think he's going to be in decent shape. Now, he might be slowing down a little bit. I'm not just talking about the chin. I think his movements seem slowed against Moicano. A lot of those kicks were not looking too fast. His striking's not bad. He fights as a southpaw, works a lot of the rear kicks. He's got a decent left hand, but one thing I've got to point out for Dariush, it's bad enough that his chin is toast. It's bad enough that he's getting older and his reaction time is probably slowing, but you'll notice he keeps his lead hand really low. So that is not good. On top of having a bad chin, he also has poor striking defense. He's got some openings with how he keeps his hands low. So yeah, he's just begging to get knocked out, unfortunately. Now Quillan Salkilld is on absolute tear. Has not lost in the UFC yet. He's got 3 finishes. Brutal finishes. He submitted Jamie Malarkey, but then smoked Nasrat Hapcrest with a head kick. And then he also smoked poor Anshul Jabli in about 12 seconds. But he's beatable. We saw this against Yanal Ashmouz. He can sort of make rookie mistakes. Sometimes his takedown entries aren't too good, and he can sort of slow down. So maybe if Dariush can make him grapple a bit here, he'll have a chance for victory. But it's just so likely that Salkild's going to KO him. Salkilld has decent power. He's got some decent clinch strikes, decent kicks, decent hands as well. Not crazy boxing, but he will, extend combinations a little bit. And if he does that, if he connects with the chin of Dariush, it's going to be nighty-night. However, he might make a mistake of wrestling here. He likes to do it a lot. Don't wrestle Dariush at all. He's really hard to control, and if you end up grappling him, he can get back up. He can, start looking for a leg lock and find a way to get to your back. So just don't get tangled up with him. Dariush's wrestling is like level 9,000 stuff. I mean, you can see advanced wrestling in the UFC, but a lot of times you'll understand it. Dariush just does all sorts of stuff you never even see. So don't get tangled up with his level 9,000 wrestling. Just knock him out. Now, the problem here is Salkilld is a massive favorite. Honestly, if I had to bet one side, it would just be Dariush, just because anytime there's just like a really high probability that a guy is supposed to KO somebody else, sometimes it doesn't happen, especially when there's a big step up in competition. But the chin is so bad, Dariush just seems so fragile at this point that I gotta say Salkild's probably going to knock him out in round 1. But we might end up having to play Dariush if this line continues to get wider. Give me Salkilld by first round KO. I imagine we're going to have a horrible line on that, so might not be able to play anything on the Salkilld side. If Dariush does win, though, it could be by sub. It could be really by anything if Salkilld gets tired, but I think probably he'd win by decision. Finally, in our main event, we got the former champion, Jack Della Maddalena, JDM, taking on the nightmare, Carlos Prates. So, I've got to be a little honest with JDM. I know he was champion, but how good is he really? Because he has a lot of sketchy wins prior to going for his title fight. He had a split decision with Kevin Holland. I know he should have won that fight, and it probably shouldn't have been a split decision, but Kevin Holland's not that good. He has a split decision with Basil Hafez. Now, I get it. Basil Hafez was coming in on really short notice, was probably still on enhancements at that time, but still not a great look. And Gilbert Burns, he's lost his last 5 fights, has recently retired, but probably his best shot at winning any of those fights was against JDM because he had won the first 2 rounds on the judges' scorecards before JDM happened to finish him in the 3rd. So I don't know. I mean, how much do we trust JDM? And he did beat Bilal Muhammad, but Muhammad's getting up there in age, and he was also kind of dumb for just trying to use his Canelo hands instead of wrestling right off the get-go. And then we see him absolutely get obliterated, humiliated by Islam Makhachev. And let's not forget, not only did JDM get out-wrestled, but he got outstruck by Makhachev. I mean, Dustin Poirier put up a way better fight than JDM did against Makhachev, so how good is this guy really? He's clearly good, he's clearly top 5 level, but I don't know if he's as good as a lot of people thought he was. He does have crisp and powerful boxing. He does a really good job of maintaining that high guard. Works to the body really well. He can hit some angles. He exits out of the pocket well after striking. Just a really sound boxing game overall. Really good fundamentals. He's been durable up to this point. We don't really see JDM get hurt a whole lot, but that kind of has to go out the window against Prates because, I mean, when did we see Leon Edwards get hurt that much? But Prates smoked him. So even though Jack Della Maddalena is pretty durable, we do have to worry about him getting hit against such a monster like Prates. Huge problem for Della Maddalena here, I think, is that he's kind of flat-footed. Now, he is the shorter guy, and he's given up quite a bit of reach in this matchup. That means in a striking match, he has to usually do one of 2 things, right? You either have to say, hey, I'm just going to go forward. I'm going to take one to give one. No, I'm going to get hit, but when they hit me, I'm going to hit them back as soon as I can get inside and just try to win a durability war. That might not be a smart thing to do against Prates, though, because again, this guy just seems to have ridiculous power. And then the other potential way you could get by if you're a shorter guy is just using a ton of movement, right? If you're shorter, but you have more movement, you're like moving your head on the entry, hitting angles, constantly using your footwork, that could be a path to victory, but JDM doesn't do that because he's so flat-footed. And one thing that really stood out against Makhachev, he does not defend calf kicks well. And Carlos Prates does have some nasty calf kicks. So this matchup could be problematic for JDM. And yeah, I've already mentioned it. Carlos Prates, his power is on another level. I mean, we say guys have power, oh, they've got a lot of knockouts, but the power that Carlos Prates has is otherworldly because he's finishing guys so consistently. He's finished all of his UFC wins by KO. Then his one UFC loss against a pretty durable guy in Ian Gary, he almost finished him. In the 5th round, he almost had Gary out of there. And geez, if Prates had decided to fight in the 1st round instead of in the 4th round, probably would have finished Gary a lot sooner. So you cannot sleep on the power of Prates, or yeah, you will be sleeping. And then the length, as I mentioned, will be key here because JDM doesn't have great footwork. He will, make slight movements on angles and stuff, but he's not really light on his feet. So he's going to have to do a lot of work to get in a range where he can strike Prates, but I just don't see him doing that well. I think Prates has better movement on his feet, and he's going to be able to use his length well. I think he's going to be able to work some heavy calf kicks that he has. I think he's going to be able to land some straight punches effectively, where JDM's not even going to be able to hit him back because there's that length differential. And I think JDM is going to be vulnerable to the body shots. I think Prates is going to be able to land to the body as well. Now, a big problem with Prates, and this is where JDM could win, that sometimes he's throwing too little. He actually has a negative strike differential so far in the UFC. We saw this come to play a little bit against Trevin Giles in his debut, then of course against Ian Gary. So sometimes when his opponent's throwing at him, he doesn't counter right away, and he just has overall low volume. But once he finds his groove, once he gets into his flow, he's throwing a lot and is usually finishing his opponents shortly after. So overall, this is a pick'em, but I lean Prates here. I think he's most likely going to find the win. I think he's got some very important advantages. JDM can win if Prates is not being super active, not countering well, and JDM just really, really aggressive, not getting hit, getting into Prates' face, unloading combinations, and then getting out, and Prates isn't really doing a lot. Then yeah, JDM can win, but there are problems with that. Like in close, he's going to be eating knees and elbows. I think JDM's more likely to get hurt or marked up. Let's be honest, we barely see Prates get marked up at all. It seems like it's impossible to do anything to this guy. Nobody's invincible, and JDM could hurt him here, but we just don't see Prates get hurt by strikes. It seems like he's unaffected by everything. So I think Prates has the power and durability advantage here. And if JDM is spending too much time at range, I think his calves are going to get beat up. He's going to get hit to the body, and he's going to get outworked by Prates just because he has so much more length. And we have seen JDM struggle a bit more against longer guys. Again, he almost lost to Kevin Holland. That was a close fight. Kevin Holland lost because he was just jabbing the high guard of Della Maddalena, not landing significant strikes. All of his strikes were getting blocked. But if he was smarter and started working to the body and legs, I think he could have won that fight. It was really close. And even though Della Maddalena finished Randy Brown in the first round, go back and watch that fight. At first, Randy Brown was having some success. So JDM definitely struggles against taller guys. And I think that's because of the problems I mentioned, because he's so flat-footed. So give me Carlos Prates here. I think he's going to be able to land some calf kicks from range, and he's going to have some nasty surprises in store for JDM. I actually bet Prates at minus 105. I think he's a good look, but you can't go too crazy because we just don't know if Prates is going to be a little hesitant at times. But over the course of 5 rounds, I expect him to do the better work and find a finish most likely. Give me Carlos Prates by second round KO. And that's going to do it, guys. We ran through the whole card. I think compared to the last couple weeks, we're going to see a lot of finishes. Last night, we saw barely anything in terms of finishes, but I don't expect a repeat of that here. I think these guys are going to get after it, and I think we're going to see a lot of knockouts on this card. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Also, leave a comment. Leave a comment about your prediction for the main event, because this is an incredible matchup in my opinion. Or leave a comment giving your favorite prediction or bet for the card. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.